You didn't say goodbye. You didn't block them. You didn't even explain yourself. You just went silent, and somehow, that silence is louder than every argument you ever had. Because deep down, you can feel it. Something is shifting. They're thinking about you more now than when you were right in front of them. And it's confusing, isn't it? How can doing nothing feel so powerful? But here's the truth no one tells you. When you stop speaking to a narcissist, you don't just create distance. You trigger something deep inside them, something they cannot control, something that slowly starts to unravel them from within. According to Carl Jung, what we suppress, what we refuse to face, doesn't disappear, it grows stronger in the shadows. And when you go silent, you become that shadow in their mind. You become the one thing they can't reach, can't control, can't understand. And for a narcissist, that is unbearable, because your silence isn't empty. It's a mirror. It reflects everything they tried to hide. Every insecurity, every fear, every crack in the image they worked so hard to build. And now, without your voice to distract them, they're left alone with themselves. At first, they won't show it. In fact, it might look like they've moved on effortlessly. They might post more, laugh louder, surround themselves with people as if your absence meant nothing. And that's what hurts you, doesn't it? You start questioning yourself. Did I even matter? Was I that easy to replace? But what you're seeing is not healing, its performance. Because narcissists don't process emotions the way you do. They escape them. They bury them under attention, validation, distractions. But your silence is different. It doesn't give them anything to react to. There's no argument to win, no message to twist, no emotion to manipulate. And that's where the real shift begins. Because when you stop speaking, you take away their control. And control is everything to them. Without it, they feel exposed, powerless, almost invisible. And this is where Jung's idea of the shadow self comes alive. The parts of themselves they've spent years avoiding start creeping in. They begin to feel something unfamiliar, discomfort. Not because they miss you in a healthy way, but because they've lost access to what you represented. You were their source of validation, their emotional supply, their proof that they mattered. And now, that source is gone. But here's the part that changes everything. You didn't just walk away. You became unpredictable. And unpredictability terrifies a narcissist. When you were there, they knew how to pull your strings. They knew how to get a reaction, how to draw you back in, how to keep you emotionally attached. But now, they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know if you've moved on. They don't know if you've forgotten them. And that uncertainty starts to consume them. Slowly, quietly, but deeply. Meanwhile, you're sitting there, thinking your silence means nothing. You think because you didn't fight back, because you didn't say your final words, you somehow lost. But in reality, you stepped into a kind of power they don't understand. Because silence is not weakness, it's control over yourself. And that's something they never had. And the more you stay silent, the louder it becomes in their mind. They start replaying memories, conversations, moments where you slipped away emotionally, even before you physically left. They begin to notice things they ignored before. Your absence forces them to confront what your presence was hiding. And that's when something unexpected happens. They start to feel the loss, but not in the way you think. Not as love. Not as regret. But as a disruption to their identity. Because to a narcissist, relationships are not about connection. They're about reflection. You were a mirror that showed them who they wanted to be. And now that mirror is gone, they don't recognize themselves the same way anymore. And that creates a void. A deep, unsettling void they will do almost anything to fill. But here's where you need to understand something important. Your silence is not just affecting them. It's transforming you. Because every moment you resist the urge to reach out, to explain, to justify, you're breaking a pattern. You're reclaiming parts of yourself that were slowly being taken away. And it doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels painful. It feels like withdrawal. Like you're losing something important. But that feeling? That's not love. That's attachment. And attachment, when broken, always hurts. So while they're distracted, trying to replace you, trying to prove they're unaffected, you're doing something much deeper. You're becoming aware. Aware of how much you gave, how much you tolerated, how much of yourself you lost trying to keep something alive that was never truly mutual. And that awareness is the beginning of your freedom. But don't mistake this for the end of their story. Because silence doesn't just make a narcissist disappear. It pulls them closer in ways you don't expect. And what happens next is where things get even more intense. At some point, the silence starts to get to them. Not all at once, not in a dramatic explosion, but slowly, like something crawling under their skin they can't scratch. Because what you did, by not speaking, by not reacting, you interrupted their pattern. And narcissists rely on patterns. They expect you to come back. They expect you to miss them, to break, to send that one message that gives them an opening again. But when that message never comes, something inside them starts to shift. They begin to check on you. Quietly at first. Maybe they watch your stories. Maybe they ask mutual friends about you. Maybe they even revisit old conversations, searching for clues, anything that helps them understand why you didn't chase them this time. Because in their mind, this isn't normal. You were never supposed to walk away like that. You were supposed to stay emotionally hooked. And now that you're not, they feel it. That loss of control begins to turn into something much deeper obsession. But here's where it gets complicated. This isn't the kind of obsession you see in movies. It's not romantic. It's not pure. It's psychological. Because according to Carl Jung, when something unresolved remains in the unconscious, it doesn't just disappear, it demands attention. And your silence has created an unresolved space inside them. A question with no answer. And the human mind, especially a narcissistic one, hates unanswered questions. So what do? They try to regain control. Sometimes it starts with something small. A message that seems casual. Hey, just checking in. Or maybe something indirect. Liking an old photo. Reacting to something you posted. Doing just enough to remind you they still exist. And if you respond even slightly, that's all they need. Because to them, any reaction is a doorway. It means the connection isn't fully broken. It means they still have access. But if you don't respond, if you stay silent even then, that's when things escalate. They might become more persistent. The messages might become more emotional, more intense. They might suddenly act like they've changed, like they understand everything now, like they've realized your worth. And this is where many people get pulled back in. Because it feels real. It feels like closure, like growth, like maybe, just maybe, things could be different this time. But you need to see this clearly. This isn't transformation. It's a strategy. Because a narcissist doesn't chase you the way a healthy person does. They chase the feeling of control they lost. They chase the version of themselves that existed when you were still giving them attention. And your silence has taken that away from them. So now, they're trying to restore it. And here's the part that most people don't realize. The more you ignore them, the more valuable you become in their mind. Not because they suddenly respect you, but because you've become difficult to access. And anything that feels rare, unavailable, or out of reach becomes more desirable to someone who is used to getting what they want. It's almost like a psychological reversal. When you were there, available, trying, giving, They took you for granted. But now that you're gone, now that you've created distance, they start to feel the weight of your absence. And not just emotionally, but mentally. You become a thought they can't turn off. They start wondering, why didn't they fight for me? Did they find someone else? Did they finally see through me? And these questions don't just sit quietly. They grow. They create doubt. And doubt is something a narcissist struggles with deeply, because it threatens the image they've built of themselves. And this is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes even more important. Because your silence is forcing them to confront parts of themselves they've always avoided. The insecurity, the fear of being irrelevant, the possibility that they're not as in control as they thought. And instead of accepting those feelings, they project them. They might start blaming you, telling themselves that you were the problem, that you were too sensitive, too distant, too difficult. Because accepting the truth that they lost control, that they couldn't manipulate you anymore, is too uncomfortable. So they rewrite the story in their mind. But even with that, the pull toward you doesn't fully disappear. Because deep down, they know something is different this time. They can feel it. You didn't just leave, you detached. And detachment is something they can't easily reverse. And here's the dangerous part. When they realize they can't control you the same way anymore, they might try a different approach. Instead of chasing you directly, they might try to provoke you. Post things that are meant to get your attention. Show off a new relationship. Act like they've moved on completely, hoping it triggers something in you. Because if they can make you react anger, jealousy, curiosity, it pulls you back into their orbit. Because to them, silence is the only thing they can't manipulate. And that's why it becomes your greatest strength. But staying silent isn't easy, is it? There are moments when you want to break it. Moments when you miss them, or at least the version of them you believed in. Moments when the loneliness hits, and you start questioning if you made the right decision. And that's where your real battle is not with them, but with yourself. Because what you're experiencing is not just emotional. It's psychological conditioning. You were used to the highs and lows, the attention and withdrawal, the push and pull. And now that it's gone, your mind is trying to make sense of the emptiness. But that emptiness? It's not a loss. It's space. Space for something real. Space for something healthy. Space for you to rebuild without being constantly pulled back into a cycle that was slowly draining you. And the longer you stay in that silence, the more something powerful happens. Not just to them, but to you. Because eventually, the dynamic completely flips. And when it does, you'll see them in a way you never did before. And when that shift finally happens, it doesn't feel loud. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, almost unfamiliar. Because one day, without even realizing it, you wake up and they're not the first thought on your mind anymore. The same person who once had the power to control your emotions, your mood, your entire day, now barely crosses your mind. And that's when you understand something deeper than anything before. This was never about them. It was about what they triggered inside you. Because according to Carl Jung, the people who affect us the most are often mirrors of our unconscious patterns. They awakened parts of us we didn't even know existed. And your narcissistic ex, they didn't just hurt you. They revealed you. They revealed your attachment, your patience, your willingness to stay even when something felt wrong. But now, through silence, through distance, through pain, you've started to see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is where the dynamic completely flips. Because while you were healing, slowly detaching, finding your center again, they were still stuck in the same loop, still needing validation, still chasing control. still trying to fill a void that never really goes away. And at some point, they feel it, the shift in your energy. Even if you haven't spoken, even if there's been no contact, they sense it. Because the version of you they once knew, the one who reacted, who cared deeply, who stayed emotionally available, that version is gone. And what replaces it is something they don't recognize. Calm, grounded, unreachable. And that's when they might try one last time. Not always directly, sometimes subtly. Sometimes in a way that feels almost accidental. A message. A coincidence. A sudden reappearance in your life. Because now, it's no longer about control. It's about curiosity mixed with ego. They want to see if they can still affect you. If they still matter. If they can still pull you back into the version of yourself that once revolved around them. But this time, something is different. You don't feel the same pull. You don't feel the same urgency to respond, to explain, to reopen a door you worked so hard to close. And that's not because you stopped caring overnight. It's because you finally chose yourself. And that choice changes everything. Because silence, in the beginning, felt like loss. It felt like you were giving up your voice, suppressing your emotions, walking away without being understood. But now, you see it for what it really was. It wasn't silence. It was self-respect. It was the moment you stopped participating in something that was slowly breaking you. And here's the truth that most people realize too late. You don't get closure from a narcissist. You create it within yourself. Because closure doesn't come from their apology, their explanation, or their sudden realization of your worth. It comes from your ability to walk away without needing any of those things. And that's what makes your silence so powerful. It's not about punishing them. It's not about making them miss you. It's about breaking free from a cycle that depended on your reaction to survive. And once you stop reacting, the cycle dies. Not immediately, not cleanly, but inevitably. Meanwhile, they're left with something they've avoided their entire life themselves. The thoughts they used to escape. The emptiness they used to fill with attention. The silence they never knew how to sit with. And that's the part no one talks about. Because while you were afraid of losing them, they were always afraid of facing themselves. And your silence forced that confrontation. But here's the final shift, the most important one. You stop wondering what they're thinking. You stop caring if they miss you. You stop checking, analyzing, and replaying. Because you realize something simple, but powerful: their mind is no longer your responsibility. Their feelings are no longer your burden. Their absence is no longer your pain. And in that moment, you're free. Not because they changed, not because they came back, but because you didn't need them to. And that's what makes this ending different. There's no final conversation, no dramatic closure, no perfect explanation that ties everything together. Just silence. But this time, it's not heavy. It's not confusing. It's peaceful. Because now, your silence isn't about them anymore. It's about you. It's the space where you finally hear your own voice again. And maybe that was the point all along.